I believe that we are allowed to bring our emotions to work, and we also are responsible for being accountable to them and regulating them. So I'm not suggesting everyone come to work and spill everywhere. That is not healthy. That's not going to work. And that is one way to walk yourself out of a job. However, I do think that the more you can infiltrate and have mental health, emotional health be part of the conversation, and whether or not it's in meetings, whether or not it's on the walls, posters, whether or not it's using your EAP, it has to become part of the vernacular.
Hello, and welcome to the Mental Health Advantage podcast, where we explore how leaders are shaping the future of workplace mental health. I'm Stephen Sokoler, founder and CEO of Journey, and today I'm joined by a dear friend, Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia. So Claude is a true pioneer in human-centered leadership, bringing empathy and heart to an industry known for high performance and tight deadlines. Claude, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Wonderful to see you. I'm so excited for your book and for this podcast.
Yes, indeed. So you've had an incredible career across multiple industries. Tell us a little bit about what got you into what you are doing now.
Yeah, so Chief Heart Officer, it's the greatest title in showbiz for sure. It means something very near and dear to me, which means I am taking care of the people and the experience that they have within the four walls of VaynerX and all of our offices across the globe. What taking care of our people means is making sure that each and every person feels psychologically safe, feels as though they belong, and that they matter. I get to touch them. I have an entire team that touches them and works on their growth and their journey, education, learning, development, those things. And then they work within their own account teams or their own disciplines. And we've trained those managers and leaders to really carry the heart as well. Really leave people better than you found them. That's really the message. So I was a strategist for a very long time, very involved in human development. And if you go back years and years, I wanted to be a psychotherapist, found other ways to be of service. And that's really what it's about for me. So all the time when I was running teams, or whether or not I was coaching tennis or captain in tennis in high school, it doesn't really matter. My love has always been the possibility of people, of humans. And I like looking at that from an individual point of view and then from a team point of view. So I am what you call a cheerleader without pom-poms. I really enjoy creating and holding space for someone in front of me or for many. And I'm here to have that hand on their shoulder and let them know, I got you, and we're going to get through this, whatever this is, so that they can get on with their journey.
I love that. Well, whatever this is, that's an interesting thought nowadays, because I don't know what this is nowadays, but it's something.
It's something.
It's something. So the title Chief Heart Officer is not one that many people have, although maybe we can change that. How did that first come about, both the title and the role?
Yes. So I've been working with Gary Vaynerchuk for almost 11 years. Many people know him as Gary V. I work with the man, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he owns VaynerMedia, and VaynerX is our holding company. So I'll refer to Vayner now as VaynerX. And I was living in London. I was running strategy at a very large agency on global accounts and getting to fly each and every direction of the sun. And I met Gary. I had been following him on Twitter. I really, really liked what he had to say. It was no nonsense. It was to the point, and it was simple to understand. And one thing led to another, and I was introduced to him while I was living in London, and we started talking about our love and our passion around people and what is possible, and seeing the cup full, not even half full all the time, and knowing that there's solutions to provide to people. So one thing led to another, and I started with him in New York in May of 2014. I was running our client strategy department. We were very much a startup and scrappy at that point. And about a year into it, after he had me visit all the other offices, and I did a lot of hiring, I did terminations, I was really that elder at the time to put my hand on people and walk with them through their journey. It dawned on me that I was no longer interested in really how to get a chapstick into your hand. I was no longer interested in doing the strategy to get a product into a consumer's hand, but I was really in love with the team building and really in love with the coaching that I was able to do. So I said to him, thank you so much. I love it here. You're great. I'm no longer interested in advertising. That was about a year in. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said the following: I only care about the people here. I care about the heartbeat. And he said, heart. Okay, one day we're going to write a book on heart. ... And he told me I had to stay in the role for 18 more months. I remember saying, I'll give you 6. Nonetheless, I stayed for about 8 months, and then I actually resigned because there wasn't a role for me, and it wasn't really HR, and I had never done HR. Lo and behold, we get back together 3 months later, and he sits down at breakfast, and he just looked at me and he said, that's it. You're coming back. You're going to be Chief Heart Officer. I didn't have to ask what that was. I know what that was. I know that is taking care of people and helping them on their way. So I asked him 2 things. What are we building? Because I had already been in the company for 16 months. And he said, we are creating the single greatest human organization in the history of time. Sign me up. And it's aspirational, and I want to be part of that. And then I said, how do we know if I'm successful? And he said, you will touch every single employee, every single human, and infuse the agencies with empathy. We were 400 at the time. We're 2,000 now. And so that is my job description. And it really is for me to figure out every single day. A lot of what I do wouldn't make sense on paper to people, but it makes sense on heart. And it makes sense on who you are as a person. And I think in this day and age, we know we know what things are extremely important to our people in the workplace, and being seen, being recognized, feeling safe is number one, is up there beyond salary. So I'm really incredibly honored that I get to do this and scale Gary and figure out ways to scale me and continue to grow this awesome agency.
I love that. So a quick aside, I was thinking about this and then you brought it up. When are you going to write a book? I feel like, Gary has his books and you help me with mine. I feel like if that's something of interest, you have so many great stories and so much insight to share. No pressure.
Stephen, the manuscript has been handed in. It will be out on shelves October 28th.
Wow. All right. You heard it here first. Unless everybody knows, because I'm not on social media. So maybe I've been missing it this whole time.
Nope. I've kept it very much under wraps.
I love that. Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I was talking to our friend Chris Shembra, who's the one that connected us. And, as a multi-time author, I was telling him, the book's out, it's on Amazon, it's a #1 bestseller in the business section. And he's been my Sherpa throughout this process. And he's like, well, once the book's out, that's when you're halfway done. You spend the next 20 years on it. And I was like, why didn't you tell me that before? I didn't sign up for this. Anyway, that's amazing. So
it's a labor of love, isn't it? I mean, it's really, and you and I both have young kids at home. So it's really you gotta shuffle the deck every single hour of the day.
That's the truth. Yeah. Let's talk about human-centered leadership. How would you define that, if you would define that, if that's a term that you like to use? And why is that critical in today's workplace?
Yeah, I would call it human-centered. I call it heart-centered. I call it empathetic. It doesn't even matter what I call it. It means if you are in your organization as a leader of any kind, your job is to help and facilitate growth and development of your people. You work for them. They don't work for you. And that's what it is. It is to be a passenger with them on their journey, not to micromanage them, not to criticize them. It is to connect with them. And from that connection, to see what is possible for this individual. Sometimes that means a promotion. Sometimes that means more feedback. Sometimes that means, hey, I don't know if you're in the right role, but we have another role for you. It can mean, a multitude of things. But why is it so necessary is because at the most basic level, human beings run organizations. Our hearts run us. I believe we need to be putting our hearts at the center of these organizations. That requires a lot of vulnerability. That requires putting your ego in the back seat and having humility. That requires a lot of emotional intelligence and really showing up present, put your phone down, being kind, asking questions, staying curious, and doing something with the information. It's one thing to listen, and I think a leader's job is to listen, but then to act. Because there's a lot of people in our workplaces today that might feel that they are too shy to speak up, or it's a corporate environment and you only can speak to your head, you're the next person in line. But I'd like to think of organizations as less hierarchical these days and more organic, quite frankly, and more holistic. Energy, ideas comes from every single place. It's no longer this top down, authoritative leadership. That's not going to fly for this Generation Z. It's just not going to fly. So it's needed because we as human beings, wherever we are, we can be playing soccer, we could be at work, we could be at the dinner table. We are emotional beings and we need to be met on that level. That is my belief.
Great. So I'm going to turn this podcast from a conversation into a coaching session for me. So as somebody who, cares deeply about his employees, like sometimes even to my own personal detriment, right? I often find that I'm not showing up for them the way I would want to. And I think it comes not from a lack of desire, but something you and I talked about off camera and you touched on before, just from honestly a lack of time. And I'm curious how you, as you work with, executives and leaders, how do you suggest that they either find that time or rethink, think of it slightly different? Because that to me is the biggest thing, where I find I'm in this meeting, I've just, I finished the podcast, I'm now in a meeting, I'm trying to be present, there's a million Slacks, and it's just challenging. So thoughts?
It's so challenging. A couple examples that you might want to try. One, I think, is going through your entire calendar for a week and seeing what are non-negotiables and what are things that can be moved or you can delegate to someone else and they can feed you the information. That's a big one, right? You don't need to be, I don't need to be in every single meeting. I have tons of people that are going to give me the information that I trust. So really taking a good look at what can you not move? And I put everything I cannot move in red. So when I look at my day or my week, okay, I know that I'm here with Stephen. I'm not going to move that. And, I might have to take a 5-minute break afterwards, or I might have to go back into another red meeting. But really looking and seeing that. And then for me, I have to be mindful of my energy. I know that I'm really good from 9 till about 3:30. I'm really, really sharp. 3:30, 4 o'clock, I might start to peter out. That doesn't mean I'm not interested. It's just that I'm tired because I am present. I'm staying present all day. So my suggestion is then only you know where your energy ebbs and flows, right? If you need a 5-minute meditation or a hit of caffeine or breath of fresh air, whatever that is. And then I would try the meetings that you want to go to. I would try to set those up in a way where you have the most energy, right? Again, we're both parents. I have I'm very boundaried. I start at 9. Sometimes I'll start at 8:30 if I have to speak to Asia or Europe, and I stop at 5:30. Within that time frame, I am yours. I am yours. I have blocks, 15-minute blocks if I need to take a walk, whatever, have some food. After 5:30, I am with my kids. If I have to get on, I will get on later. It's very rare. I'm trying to fit as much as I possibly can. That is important. The 1% of things that are important, not the 99% of things that I'm just going to feel like I got left out. I've been through that where you're like, why wasn't I invited? I saw a rate card meeting today. Why wasn't I invited to that meeting? And I said, you know what, Claude, you have nothing to add to that meeting. They're going to tell you what the rate card is. I'm not into finances. I don't need to be there, but I had that feeling like, wait a second, I was missed. So seeing what is absolutely immovable, non-negotiable, and trying to set yourself up so that your energy matches where you need to be at those times. It's not perfect. There's no science to it. It is trial and error, but I highly suggest and recommend that we all try it, at least to take a query on what you do and how you spend your time daily.
Yeah, well, I've gone through my schedule and started eliminating things and moving things. But the second suggestion is really interesting because for me, similar to you, my mornings are when I do my best work. And so in my calendar, it says priority number 2, and it's blocked every day until noon. And it used to be priority number 1, and then I was like, you know what? My family, my son, that's priority number 1. So I want to make sure that that's really clear to me and to others, right? However, the most important journey thing that I'll work on, I will do in the morning. And maybe it's time for me to, walk the walk. Like if I'm saying that our people are super important, maybe one day that's when I do all my one-on-ones, and I have them in the morning because I do them usually in the afternoon because, I have to move around clients and I can't do thinking work, but it's actually a really, really
Yeah,
interesting idea.
yeah. Try it
Uh,
out. And I would say, because being with people over and over and over and over again, while very rewarding, and you and I both love that, it can also exhaust us. I don't mean drain us, because I believe you have very, very healthy boundaries, as I do, and there are ways in which we need to compartmentalize things so we don't take everything on. Um, yeah, and some days you're going to feel like a wet blanket.
yeah, yeah. So let's go back to the whether we call it empathetic leadership or
Yeah.
human-centered leadership. We talked a little bit about, me personally, but obviously that applies to others. But let's talk about organizationally. So, what are the biggest challenges? Some of the biggest challenges you've seen in organizations to embrace this type of mindset?
I absolutely think that it's easier said than done. That's what I think. Bottom line, not every single person who you report to is going to be on the same train. Some people are going to say, you know what? Your emotional health and your mental health, you take care of after 5 o'clock with your therapist. That is a no go. I don't believe in that. I believe that we are allowed to bring our emotions to work, and we also are responsible for being accountable to them and regulating them. So I'm not suggesting everyone come to work and spill everywhere. That is not healthy. That's not going to work. And that is one way to walk yourself out of a job. However, I do think that the more you can infiltrate and have mental health, emotional health be part of the conversation, and whether or not it's in meetings, whether or not it's on the walls, posters, whether or not it's using your EAP, it has to become part of the vernacular, which is, how is that person? Which is just a question. Did you check in with Bobby? How's Bobby doing? I noticed on social that Bobby's grandmother died. Have we checked in with him? I don't mean just sending flowers. Like, is anyone touching him? Right? What happens in our organization is most of the time, and this can be very heavy, when there is a death in the organization or someone's parent or loved one has been diagnosed with something terminal, I'll find that out. They'll get a text, immediate text from myself and Gary, and we'll do what we can to surround that person with as much love as we possibly can. That's just high touch. I want to be that high touch. I don't have everyone's phone number. I have to do a little footwork and find it, but it's not a job. That's what I'm supposed to do. So I think, to back up again, it is important for all of us to be talking about our own journeys. That is important. And I think it's allowed. And I do not think the younger folks are going to feel like they have freedom to do so if we don't start showing up as humans, because we're not robots. None of us are. And you, way before you start your work day, you have family time. You might meditate. You might make breakfast. You might go for a run. We might have a fight with our spouse. All kinds of things are happening for those first 3 hours. Most of us are up maybe from at 6 or so. Then we walk into work. Well, please know that I can't shut everything down. I'm a human. And so how are we going to show up for these humans? And I say it's the same thing as, how do you show up for your family? I worked with a leader once that showed up. I was with him. He showed up for his kids in such a warm, wonderful way. And then when he got to work, it was, don't come too close. And it was a real problem for people. So it needs to be in the conversation. It needs to be in the tap water. It's not Kool-Aid. This is the real deal. And as much, I really mean it, as much propaganda or paraphernalia that you need to put on your walls to remind people that their mental health is their responsibility, but we care for you.
Yeah,
I
I
think
love
that
that.
has to happen. Yeah.
Let's talk about something that's pretty timely. So, there's a new administration. We
Yes.
are, I don't even know how many days in, a few weeks,
Not a lot.
and a lot's happening. How are you, as an organization, dealing with the changes that are happening and the uncertainty that's brought on? And feel free to speak to that across any number of different categories, whether that's the impact on certain marginalized communities, or just the overall uncertainty, or the speed, or the fact that maybe a lot of people are quite happy with what's going on, and yeah,
Yeah.
what's
Well,
happening there.
I haven't come across anyone that's happy or psyched about what's going on. That doesn't mean that there aren't some. It's just that that's not what those are not the people knocking on my door. Um, we will not give up or stray away or ignore our DEIA efforts at all. We still have our head of DE&I front and center, works with me every single day. And that is extremely important for us to be there for not only our marginalized population and underserved, our neurodivergent population. That is really important. What we've done at most of our offices, with the exception of our New York office right now, is we've created new office spaces for neurodivergent thinkers. Some people want to just hide out and put headphones on. Some people want to sit with others. Some people want to sit back on a couch and work. Whatever that is, we've made our environments um, uh, suited for today's population. What's happening in the world and what's happening in our world in the U.S. is it's pretty remarkable in that it's I just didn't know we would have this nightmare so quick. And when I open up the news or LinkedIn and I see all these other companies um, that are going backwards in time, it's a heartbreak. It's a heartbreak for me. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need DEIA. We wouldn't. Everyone would be accepted. You and I know that we don't live in a perfect world. That's why we do what we do, to try to make it as sustainable as it possibly can, and as tender, I would say. So we haven't given up any of those efforts. Our CRGs, our community resource groups, are alive and booming. It's Black History Month. So we're present. We're here, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, I spoke to two companies yesterday and the day before, and they're government contractors,
Mm,
and they have to put a lot of stuff on pause because they don't want to face the backlash, or go against anything, and there's just a lot of uncertainty. And I was on a podcast last night, and in your seat, and we were talking about this topic, and I said, DEI as a brand, right? There's a lot of different feelings on that are very strong on all sides, but when you just talk about the actual concepts and what you were just mentioning, right? In an ideal world, people are treated fairly, no matter who they are, no matter what their walk of life is, no matter where they come from. And I hope that we can continue to do the work to find our way there, whatever we call it, whatever
yeah.
label we put on it. Just
Yeah, whatever we need to, if we need to call it something else and still do the work, that is great. That is what we need to do to survive in this time and hopefully thrive in this time. But I really want to shout out the companies that are able to maintain their DE&I efforts internally, and I feel for those people that are impacted, the government workers that are impacted, or some of these more corporate organizations that are saying goodbye to what is just human.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the advertising industry. So, high
Okay.
pressure, high stress. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see employees facing specific to this industry?
Well, the industry is going through a massive, massive, massive reimagination right now. And in order to get to the reimagination, it's going to burn for a bit. And it's collapsing with WPP becoming private and Omnicom merging, and more agencies laying people off. I think that coupled with the rush to understand AI, excuse me, not information architecture, artificial intelligence, the rush to understand that is also in some way, shape or form creating some kind of fictional threat. Fictional threat. A lot of jobs aren't going away. They are morphing, they are transitioning, and there are jobs that are going away. And I think companies are looking at a lot of redundancies. We are as well. Like, where are there redundancies? Where is there extra beef right now that we don't necessarily need? And how can we help those people on the outside? So, my boss is definitely doesn't have a crystal ball, but he's able to see around corners very well because he pays attention. And he saw this coming about 18 months ago. He saw that the world of advertising and marketing as we know it was going to crumble, and people were going to, it was really going to be focused on the creators today and the influencers. So fortunately, we are on the right side of history there, and we're prepped for that. And I think those other behemoth agencies haven't been. They do massive, very important brand work for the biggest brands that you and I use every single day. But the world has changed. I don't know if we need brand architecture for every single brand. I think people want to know, that we want to get things into their hands. And I think consumerism has really changed. I don't know if there's that much loyalty right now. I think it's very emotive. It's very funny. It's very cheeky. It's very clever. And advertising and marketing need to change. I would say the other thing that has been very obvious to everyone is the amount of the bloated paychecks that happen in the advertising, marketing, and media world. Whether or not that's commission based, whether or not that's salary, it doesn't matter, but they're quite bloated, and it leaves an enormous delta between whomever's up here and the workers. And that's known now. In New York City alone, you have to share the salaries when you go when you put up a job post, the salary range. So things like that they're becoming more transparent. I think that's a great thing. That's a great thing. I don't like secrecy. I didn't like it when I was on the floor of an agency. I don't like it in my position now. I think the more we are transparent with people, at least it allows them to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So you and I have worked together for a number of years now, and I've seen you continue to navigate, whether it's going into the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, everything that's happening now, AI, new administration, and all the wars and everything else, and the anti-Semitism, and and on and on and on. And I'm sure that will continue. And so as a final question, I guess if you had one piece of advice or call to action for leaders listening today, and that's obviously a very broad question, what would it be?
I think leaders today need to humanize themselves and walk the walk, talk the talk. If we are asking other people to be vulnerable and share with us and show that they are mere mortals, then we also need to show that we are mere mortals. We are interested in our own growth and development as well. We're not sitting here pointing fingers. There's no difference. In my book, there is very little difference between you and me, except for lived experience and gender. But you and I both have red blood. You and I both feel very similar emotions. That's what happens with humans. So there's no reason for me to keep myself armored and expect you to show up if I'm not showing up as well. And I would say the last thing I would say is be someone that other people want in the room. Like, be that person. Be that person.
I love that. I feel like you and I could talk for hours, but time will not allow that today. Thank you, as always, for sharing your insights and your wisdom and your heart with us. It's motivating for me just being in your presence, even virtually.
I know.
Wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. This has been the Mental Health Advantage podcast, and have a beautiful day.